Thank you for your interest in this topic. If we can go to the next slide. Yes, so we'll talk about how food is connected to climate change. We're going to look at current research linking human health to plant-based diets and organic food. We're going to provide an understanding of the school food system. It is complicated, so it's important to know how a system is structured before we try to change it. We'll learn about how change has happened at other California schools and how you can help bring more climate-friendly food to your districts, your school meal program. And we want to highlight how you can take immediate action by supporting California legislation that is incentivizing climate-friendly plant-based food in school lunch and some other exciting steps for you. So a little bit about Friends of the Earth. It's maybe the first time you've heard about us. Maybe you're very familiar and you're a supporter. But we have a food and agriculture program that works rapidly to transition our food system, the one that is sustainable, healthy, and just. And within that, we have a healthy, climate-friendly school or food programs that works to shift state, municipal, K-12, and university food service purchasing dollars to support local farmers, ranchers, and drive market shifts in consumption towards healthier, plant-forward, sustainable food. So today's webinar is going to be focusing on that K-12 bit, but just so you know, we do a lot of other awesome work using institutional purchasing power. This is us. I'm the one on your left, Elizabeth Vaughn. I am the most recent addition to Friends of the Earth team. My background's from San Diego County, working on a lot of farm-to-school programming and institutional food procurement down there. And I'll be working with school districts here in California and including you community advocates on the line on how we can shift food school menus towards plant-based options. Kari Hammerschlag is the Deputy Director of our Food and Agriculture Program at Friends of the Earth. She'll be teaching us about how food is connected to climate change and how it's connected to our human health here, coming up here shortly. And we just want to let you know you're not alone in this. There's a lot of other partners at the table. There's a lot of energy in California, and we're excited to work with you. And who you all are, we've had some awesome people attend this webinar. Lots of parents, we have had a few students, we have some teachers, there may be other family members on the call. I just want to thank you all for attending, because you are the community members across the state who want to change school food. And we do have some hot spots. We've had a lot of people in the Sacramento area, the LA area, San Diego, Santa Rosa. So we're really excited to maybe connect some of your regions together and how you can work together. All right, so before we dive into this topic, we want to talk briefly about the food system. So when we talk about food more broadly, like with climate-friendly food, we are talking about food that exists within a system. So this means how the food is grown or raised, what's being sprayed on it, what's happening to the soil of that food, what's the animal welfare, how is it harvested, produced, what are the labor conditions, how's it being processed, how is it being distributed and served? Where is it coming from? How that food's being consumed? And then how is that food being disposed of? Food waste is a huge concern right now in our nation, and that's for good reason. And values, the culture components to food, those exist as well. But as many of you are aware, this industrial food system and all of its various stages has profound negative impacts on people and the planet. And so we are trying to change that through school food. That's why we're here today. So why school lunch? With 7 billion meals and 30 million kids served nationally, school food has the potential to be a powerful vehicle to address climate change while improving the health of our most vulnerable children. In California, we serve 550 million school lunches a day, and 4 million kids who depend on school food of those 4 million kids depend on it for their primary source of nutrition. These are kids that need access to healthier food. Their families are depending on the food to provide their child a quality education and hopefully a fulfilling, healthy meal to give them the energy and brain power they need to keep learning throughout the school day. So this is a typical school lunch that meets our current federal nutrition standards. We have milk here. You can see the protein, pepperoni pizza, that crust is the grain, and then we have the fruit and vegetable that's required for the kids to take as well. In most schools, kids are served factory farm meat and dairy 5 days a week. And the most common meats, pepperoni, ground beef, and deli meats. All some of the most unhealthy meats and also unsustainable for the planet, which we'll learn about later on. But we want to make a note here and just say school nutrition staff are not the villains. They have limited budgets, equipment, and staff. They operate in a world that is dominated by big food. And the system subsidizes much of this through unhealthy, highly processed meat via the U.S. Commodity Foods Program. They're facing an uphill battle. It's not, our system isn't set up to support them. So this is a problem, but there's also this opportunity for schools, passionate parents, students, and administrators to make an impact on the health of their school community by offering delicious, plant-based, climate-friendly food. So we're going to look a bit more on the background behind that. We're going to understand how school food works and inspire you to begin a journey or build off of your current journey of changing school food in your community and how to make that happen. So now we'll move over to Kari, who's going to go over why this is important.
Yeah, so hi everybody, and thank you so much for joining. I think, but before we talk about how we're going to change school food, we want to make sure that you have a good understanding of the links between school food and climate change. I imagine that most of you on this webinar will agree that climate change is one of the most urgent issues of our time. This past year, in fact, has been a stark reminder of why that we need to focus more on climate change, from the devastating impacts of the extreme fires in California, the drought, and the now floods across the Midwest, or Hurricane Florence in the Carolinas last year that claimed the lives of more than 40 people and 4 million farm animals. Signs of climate change are all around us. And as you hear about the role of global warming in making these devastating weather events more extreme, what you're not hearing about is the role of food, and in particular, the role of animal foods in generating the greenhouse gas emissions that are causing a lot of this climate havoc. So food, unfortunately, is one of the most forgotten culprits in climate change, and therefore it is also forgotten as a key solution. So we want to change that. New York City is just has started to do that. I don't know if any of you heard, but they just announced that they are slashing 50% of their meat purchasing, including for schools, and also phasing out processed meat as part of their climate commitment. But anyway, a key takeaway here is just to understand that shifting what's on our plate has to be a key climate solution. It's also about creating intergenerational equity so that we can leave our kids a world 30 years from now that has enough water and pollinators and other natural resources to keep producing healthy food for generations to come. So last year, Paul Hawken released a groundbreaking report. Lots of 200 experts were part of this, and they found that food and agriculture make up the top 20 strategies for reversing climate change. And the number 4 strategy was plant-rich diet. And not only is the shift to plant-based diets a major overlooked solution, but we literally can't solve climate change or avoid the worst impacts unless we dramatically shift how we produce our food. And this is kind of a wonky graph, but what it shows is that if current ag production and meat consumption trends continue, that in their current trajectory, the emissions from food and agriculture will occupy the entire carbon budget by 2050. And so we could have every other sector, including energy and transport, get to net zero, and we still will not meet our climate goals of 1.5 degrees. That's where Friends of the Earth believes we need to be. So we have a lot of work to do to reduce our consumption. So let's talk a little bit about why this is, why food and agriculture. So it makes up about 25% of the greenhouse gas emissions globally, and food animals production accounts for 16% of global greenhouse gas emissions, and that's more than the entire transport sector combined. And of that, beef and dairy account for about half of those emissions. So why beef and dairy? Well, it has a lot to do with methane emissions from cows. Methane, it's the enteric fermentation that process for their digestive system. So it comes out in burps and farts. And methane is 30 to 80 times more potent than CO2. Also, the waste from all of the confined animals. We confine 9 billion animals in America, and that creates a lot of waste. And there's a lot of methane that gets produced, not to mention tremendous water and air pollution and that harms local communities. The other piece that's important to keep in mind is The other reason that beef cows contribute so many emissions has to do with the fact that they are very inefficient at converting feed into meat. It takes 6 to 10 pounds of feed for every pound of meat. And producing all that feed for cows and for other animals has major impacts. And one that you often don't hear about or think about is the fact that we have our own rainforest here in the United States, and it's called the native prairie lands, that we are clearing at unprecedented rates to plant monocultures for animal feed and biofuels. And this land conversion releases large amounts of carbon emissions. It destroys biodiversity and habitat and water resources. And then when you are turning it into the monocultures, you're also applying a lot of massive fertilizer, and that creates nitrogen oxide, which is a greenhouse gas that is 300 times as potent as carbon dioxide. So how do all these massive greenhouse gas emissions translate when you consider the food we eat and serve to kids? So as you can see in this chart, not all food is created equal. Not all protein is created equal. There's varying carbon footprints, and depending on the type of food. And here you'll see that beef, cheese, and pork have some of the highest emissions, and beans, lentils, and tofu some of the lowest. And if you want to think about it, beef is 30 times more greenhouse gas intensive than lentils. I don't know if we have any lentil fans out there, but lentils are an awesome plant-based protein. So how this plays out. So also, of course, animal foods use a tremendous amount of water as well, and we will have less, not more water as climate chaos intensifies. This gives you just a little sense of how this carbon footprint plays out in school food. You've got the beef hot dog up there, the pepperoni pizza at the top high, and the tofu veggie stir fry and the veggie tostada there quite a bit lower. So how this plays out in school food is shown in this chart, and as you can see here, animal foods this is an analysis that Friends of the Earth did of Oakland Unified School District and of their food service, and you can see 76% of their emissions from their food service come from animal products. So that's a very high percentage, and we need to get that. We're aiming to reduce that, and this was before Oakland implemented meat reduction programs. And so we actually partnered with Oakland Unified to actually look at what are the climate impacts of reducing meat consumption. And over a 2-year period, we assessed the full carbon and water footprint and the shift over a 2-year period and tracked reductions in both carbon and water footprints as a result of their shift to less and better meat. And this is what we found. After 2 years, they reduced their meat and dairy by 30%, and they saved 42 million gallons of water. They reduced their carbon footprint by 14%, and they saved money, $42,000. And so, as you can see, that is like the equivalent of planting 15,000 trees or 87 solar systems, but it didn't cost a dime to do it. They saved money. So it's a really great carbon mitigation strategy. And we've kind of done the analysis for the entire country and looked at if every public school swapped out a beef burger for a protein-rich veggie burger just once a month, we would save 1.4 billion pounds of CO2, and that's equivalent to not burning 700 million pounds of coal. And that's just one recipe swap 10 times a year. So this is a powerful strategy. So I just want to wrap up by saying climate-friendly food is also healthy. So let's talk very quickly about the health impacts. Eating more plants and less meat is also an overlooked solution for health. It's overlooked for the climate, and it's overlooked for health. We know from many, many studies that high consumption of red and processed meat is associated with increased rates of diet-related diseases such as diabetes, heart disease, obesity, and even some cancers. And in California, we know that obesity is escalating as a state trend. 1/3 of children in California are overweight or obese, developing a lot of chronic health conditions. And these diseases I just mentioned are much more common among ethnic and racial minorities, especially Latinos and African Americans, as well as lower income Californians. So we really need to, and Americans Americans and kids, including kids, eat 3 times as much meat as the global average. They eat more than is recommended by our guidelines, and so there's a lot of room for improvement. And you know, while many folks are concerned about the protein issue, it really shouldn't be a concern. The average protein people are getting is up in the 90 range, where we could be is in the 50 to 70 range. So protein shouldn't be a big concern. We know that diets high in vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and beans help prevent diseases, costly diseases like diabetes, heart disease, and we can save a lot of money if we improve our increase plant-based food consumption. And you know, because of that, there really is a major public health consensus on the need to reduce meat and eat more plant-based foods. So all these entities up here on the screen are encouraging less meat and more plants. And really important to point out that the World Health Organization several years ago classified processed meat as a known human carcinogen and red meat, including beef and pork, as a probable human carcinogen. So we have a lot of reason to try to shift school food menus. Before I pass this back to Elizabeth to talk about what schools in California are doing, I just want to highlight that that what I've been talking about here are the health and environmental impacts of industrially produced animal products, which is what most Americans are eating. So about 98% of meat and dairy are coming from factory farms. But just as protein is not created equal, but just as not all protein is created equal, all production systems also are not created equal when considering the impacts on our own health and soil, climate change, and water resources. So agriculture actually has the potential to be a huge part of the solution if we shift production away from energy-intensive monoculture to more diverse, ecological, organic, and climate-friendly mixed crop and livestock systems. So these kinds of farming systems, they're often called agroecological, regenerative, organic. They're using natural organic practices, not chemicals, to cultivate the land and build soil fertility. And so practices like composting, cover crops, crop rotations, rotational grazing, they all help to sequester carbon in the ground. It's a great solution, climate change solution. They pull the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And as they do that, they increase the moisture holding capacity in the soil. So they're also able to withstand the droughts, much more resilient to climate change. And if managed well, they can also be important habitat for beneficial critters, including bees and butterflies when you use these practices. And also, I need to say, organic and pasture-raised animals, they're not produced with pesticides, herbicides, antibiotics, or hormones. So all these toxic chemicals are kept out of our bodies when we consume them, and they're also better for our health too. And I just want to mention a study, maybe some of you have heard about this study that we did where we fed 4 families across the country an organic diet for organic food for a week. And after a week being on an organic diet, we saw dramatic reductions in pesticides in 4 families after 1 week. So we are also advocating for organic in school food. Everyone deserves to access to healthy, toxic-free food. So I'm going to now pass this back to Elizabeth, who will give us some more information about what schools are doing and how we can promote better climate-friendly food in school lunch.
Yeah, thank you, Kari, for all that enlightening information. And I know it's a lot that was just thrown at all of you right now. We're definitely going to be sharing this recording in PowerPoint, and please feel free to pass along all this great information to your network. We can share the research too that's behind these slides. So this picture, a reflection of the American diet, it's not a reflection of all schools, but it is what you will find more often than not. There are solutions to this, and schools don't have to be a place for perpetuating this diet. So our schools want to provide proper nutrition that best serves student needs and taste preferences, and many are doing their best with available resources that they have, but there is room for improvement. And some have figured out some great strategies, and we'll look at those strategies in a minute. But before we talk about changing a system, we have to know how it works or how it doesn't work. So the Federal National School Lunch Program is what funds our schools' cafeterias. It's supposed to be providing nutritionally balanced meals to school children, and our tax dollars pay for this program. And school lunch has a long history. The big factor to understand with school lunch is how reimbursement with the free and reduced price meals works, especially with 58% of California students receiving free and reduced lunch. And that 550 million lunches that are served yearly that we talked about. This funding makes a huge difference for a school. The higher a school's free reduced price meal percentage, the more funding and resources they have to work with. And schools are all operating on extremely tight budgets. And these participation rates make a big difference for the school's operating budget and their ability to be innovative, try new things. When a student buys a lunch at a full price, that student is supporting their local school meal program. And by providing schools resources and community support on how to make their food more delicious and nutritious and climate friendly, of course, there's increasing participation rates, which leads to more funds, and then we are helping our school get set up for food change success. So we'll look at some of those examples later on. I do want to note too that Friends with Earth has created a school food report that dives more into these details that we'll share with you later on. But the school food operations space is very complicated. We could do a whole webinar on that. So I'm just giving you the basics. So the heat and serve model, this is what a lot of schools have been operating with. This oven, it reheats food that's frozen, bought from a distributor that's all prepackaged, and then that's how the kids get served. And there used to be deep fryers too, but they're getting rid of those. And progress is being made. We see scratch cooking models. They are amazing, and they're the ones that you see on this slide, and schools are figuring out how to do this. Scratch cook, speed scratch cooking is similar process to what we would think of as a home-cooked meal, but it's a meal made for thousands and thousands of kids. And the man stirring that sauce there is from Lakeside Union in San Diego County, my hometown. And they've got funding to set up scratch cooking for their staff. They have this needed staff hours to prepare the food. And this district is saving money through their scratch cooking program. So for example, they used to buy frozen pre-made muffins for breakfast that cost 55 to 65 cents. But when they purchased the whole ingredients, so flour, the salt, the sugar to make those muffins in-house, their cost dropped a third, the price to make that product drops a third of the cost. And then that director, the food service director, is left with more money to pay for the extra labor that she's using to make these awesome meals. We now see more salad bars, healthy snacks also being provided to students. So things are changing. And even if schools don't have full kitchens to do this type of scratch cooking, there are a lot of pre-made products that can be used in the heat and serve model that are plant-based. And there's still simple recipe swaps that can make a huge difference. Ultimately, scratch cooking is the key for bringing healthy, more sustainable food back to our school food system. And in order to do that, schools need more infrastructure and funding for their kitchen cooking capacity and operations. We've seen local bonds get passed across the state in various cities. We just had one in my home city, which I'm really excited about. And there's grant programs also. So there are resources and ways to start making these changes. So Kari talked about the Oakland, and here's the school food report I mentioned earlier that has a lot of details on the school food system and examples of how we can change it. And we wanted to understand what the most successful schools are doing so that other schools can replicate these strategies. And we talked to 18 school districts, including many in California, and we found that the most successful schools are those that are shifting the paradigm from heat and serve and fast food to fresh local food that is cooked from scratch in-house. That's not the majority, and there's a lot of them still have limited kitchens, but we're making progress. So let's take a look at a few of these examples to understand the strategies that have worked at other schools. And I do want to note that before we dive into that, every school district is different, and the solutions can vary on district size, if there's school board support. So we'll be talking about that a bit more as well. So looking at Riverside Unified School District, you can get to the next slide, please. Thank you. So Riverside Unified has been able to implement an awesome plant-based menu. And this is a picture. You can see some of the 4 menu items they offer there. They've had strong community support with their supply chain through a local processing center that sources organic food from farmers. Their central kitchen was remodeled for scratch cooking, and their cost went from 37.9% for their food costs down to 31%. So they also figured out how to save money that way. They run amazing pop-up cafes where kids get to try new recipes, grab and go, and their student participation increased. in their school lunch program, even with dropping enrollment in their district. So they are doing amazing work. San Diego Unified is also doing some great plant-based meal options. They do a lot of garden education, cooking classes, student recipe contests. These are all great ways to get the students engaged and participate in these healthier meal options. We also look at Santa Barbara Unified. They were the first district in the country to eliminate all processed red meats from their menu. And they switched many of their meat-based dishes to a plant-based using a GMO-free soy replacement with great flavor profiling, and it's provided by a company called Hungry Planet. And this company provides their products to school districts, so they're a great vendor to have on our team. And Santa Barbara is really smart. They have slogans, "Don't yuck my yum." They really engage students in the process and have them served as ambassadors as well. We look at Los Angeles Unified. They were the first district in the, they were the first district in the nation to pass a school board measure that required plant-based offerings at every meal. This was huge. And they came about that because of the advocacy of one high school student. And so it really shows that you can do a lot when you're committed and you show up and you advocate for the changes that you want to see. All right. And they also have that awesome flavor station that gets the kids excited about spicing up their meals. All right. So making change. It starts with a school village because it definitely takes a village to make the lasting change that we need to see. This is a slide kind of highlighting all the different groups that are part of that. Leadership is a key element. Food service directors are on the front lines. They're very important. Really need their support. We also need school boards, superintendents, parent advocates, nonprofit partners such as Friends of the Earth, and of course students. As we heard from those other examples, they're key. Their voices are so important, and in our research we found that kids' voices really do make the big difference, and they're really important. So changing school lunch, I want to jump into an example of how this has happened on the ground with the story of one parent, Mandisa Woods, and she had her daughter at Oakland Unified back in 2007. And she paid the visit to Oakland Unified's kitchen after her daughter, who was about 8 at the time, came home crying because of brown broccoli. So she went to talk with this lunch lady, as her daughter and affectionately coined her. And she learned that the lunch lady was the only staff member in charge of feeding the kids. And in West Oakland, 70% of these students qualify for free meals. And the lunch lady told her how she witnessed changes in the quality of the student lunches over her career that came with the faster method for prepackaged food preparation, the heat and serve model. She said the broccoli will not ever be green if the entire lunch is prepackaged and reheated over and over again. And she talked with Mandisa about the details of a new school-wide food system, or a new school food system that is including a weekly farmers market and a daily salad bar, fruit of the month classroom tastings. And the school administrators have been looking to implement a farmers market to offer fresh, healthy food to the students in the community. And then they could, by doing that, they could eventually qualify for salad bar funding. But they needed the parent support. They needed the parents to get engaged, because if they didn't have the parents to help with the cut staff time that the district was experiencing, they couldn't implement these programs. So Mandisa heard her story out, she saw what the problems was, and that day she left to become the new parent farmers market manager and helped turn Oakland's school food program around by providing support that way. So the change happened. She continued to be a volunteer at the farmers market program for years. She worked with the staff, saw the challenges that they faced, and she helped address them one step at a time. And sometimes you get thanked for your work, so it's nice that she would get notes like this. Since her efforts, Oakland Unified School District continues to focus on bringing more fresh fruit and vegetables. This was over 10 years ago. As you've heard in our Oakland Unified School report, they've done and achieved so much just in recent years. So this really, not saying Mandisa's efforts, maybe caused all of this, but they certainly helped with bringing Oakland to where they are today. They've reshaped their menu, they have fewer animal foods, and as Kari said, they've really brought a lot of plant-based options in as well. So making change in your local school district, this is when it comes to you. We've learned how the food system works, we've seen some roadmaps, we've seen how a parent ignited change. We've probably got a sense that none of this work is going to be easy. It really does take a village, and each person really matters in this process. So where do we start? And we're excited to work with our partner, One Meal a Day for the Planet, on this toolkit that you see. And after the webinar, we'll be sharing this toolkit with you as well, so you can dig deeper. But we want to take a few minutes to review the first couple steps. So the first step of how we bring these changes as a community member, as a parent, as a teacher, as a student, we have to team up. Getting more plant-based meal options at your school will be easier and more fun if you're working with others. So don't be shy, reach out, recruit other friends, students, parents, teachers. If you're a parent, consider speaking up at a PTA meeting to ask for support. And students can try working with student body representatives. Maybe there's a sustainability club, getting more parents on the board who are supportive. Are there teachers you know in the school that you think might be good allies? Various outlets exist at school districts for finding your team members. There's wellness committees that can be active at some school districts, a PTA committee, student cooking or gardening clubs. There's some different examples. And yeah, we want to connect with you once we identify Friends with Earth members in your community, also to help you with building up this team. So that's part of the reason why we ask for your zip code during registration. So we're hoping to make sure, we're going to make sure you guys all know each other. All right, the second step, understanding the kitchen. So before you can really make change, it's important to understand the kitchen, the current menu offerings, such as Mandisa did when she spoke with the Oakland Unified staff on what their challenges were. So you want to know, is your kitchen only designed for heat and serve, or does it have the proper equipment for scratch cooking? If allowed, join the kids for a meal to get a better understanding of what's being served and what students like. Check out their current menu. Has your school tried a meatless Monday? Are there plant-based options already being offered? If so, are they more substantial than a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or are they actually a hot, delicious menu item? Which menu items could easily be swapped out or upgraded? These are all great questions to start with. And then your operations in-house or outsourced. Sometimes districts outsource to an independent food service operator like Sodexo or some else. It's not an actual employee of the school. And we always want to give credit where it's due. What's your district already doing well? And start from there, and how can we improve it? Together, of course. So as we, as we move forward in this toolkit for change, this next step we wanted to go over is to clarify our goals, formulate these questions. So once you have gathered all that information, you want to lay out the options of possible questions to ask the food service director, what your ask is going to be. For example, you might want to ask if they can serve plant-based option at every meal. If it's offer versus serve, these are other questions that you'll need to make sure, but if there's 4 options being provided to the students, is one of them a plant-based option? Maybe once a week they can do 100% plus plant-based options. And many schools are implementing meatless Mondays, but mostly only as an option. As Kari said, we just had New York City do entire school district is now going to be going meatless on Mondays. That's 1 million meals a day. So that's huge. So these little changes make a big difference. And you want to ask about whether they source any organic food, if they're willing to look into finding more organic sources. And you'll be meeting with your team or your recruited villagers who are going to help you bring about this change to discuss your goals, and that will prepare you in your meeting with the food service director. That's the next step. And there's more steps to that process. We just wanted to give you a highlight of what those first few steps are, so you can get an understanding of how we can use this toolkit together. So we've learned about we've learned about how the food system works. We've seen some roadmaps. We've seen how a parent ignited change. We probably got a sense that none of this work is easy, and we're really excited to work with you. So before we close, we want to end with the power of policy. There are a lot of different points of influence. We have lots of opportunities at the local levels, which we may explore more on depth on a future webinar, since we've packed in so much information with you here today. But just want to highlight your role as the community's voice will always be a large gear in this larger system, helping to shape the other gears and bring the change. And all of these gears have to be moving for schools to make the change that's needed. So Kari is going to talk a little bit more about this awesome bill that we have in California that's part of that state policy gear, so we can assist these schools using that route. All right, Kari, off to you.
All right, thanks, Elizabeth. And thanks to all of you for staying tuned here. We're almost to the question and answer time. So I just wanted to highlight an exciting first of its kind bill in California that we have been working really, really hard to get passed. It's called AB 479, the California Plant-Based School Lunch and Beverage Program. This is the first this is the first bill in the nation to incentivize plant-based meals and beverages in schools. You know, we were talking a lot about all the different strategies, but we know that it takes a lot of support. The school districts, we hosted a school food forum with school food directors in Southern California in the fall, and we heard from them loud and clear that they need support for this, and so we wanted to help them get support, and so we have been working with Assembly Member Nazarian out of LA to get this bill through, and we're really happy that the bill has passed the Education Committee 5-0 after the National Cattlemen's Association and the California Dairy Council pulled their opposition. We agreed to actually take climate friendly out of the bill. Originally, it was called the California Climate Friendly School Lunch Act, but they really don't like us to point out that animal foods have an impact on climate, and so we wanted to make sure that they were not going to oppose the bill. So it doesn't talk about climate change anymore, but we all know it's going to have a big impact on climate if it passes. So each schools can apply for reimbursement for each additional plant-based meal that they serve. So we really need your help. It's going to the Appropriations Committee next, and that's going to be on May 15th. We'll find out if we're still alive in the assembly, and if we are, then it will go for a vote for the entire assembly. And we really need your support. We'd love to have you call your assembly member. And if it keeps going through the system, you know, there are other ways that you can get involved by writing op-eds and sharing information with your friends and family, scheduling meetings, in-person meetings with your assembly member, and we will keep you posted. And after this webinar, we're going to send you more information on how to take action on this bill. So we have some additional resources, and I'm going to pass it over to Elizabeth. I think we're going to wrap up with some questions and answers.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Kari. Yeah, so we have that list of resources, and again, these slides will be shared afterwards. So now that you believe healthy, climate-friendly food is important, and hopefully we've learned more about why, and you've seen that it's possible, we want to support you in making change in your community step by step. So we want to now ask you one last poll question. Are you all ready? And the poll question will pop up soon. Are you all ready to take additional steps to bring more healthy, climate-friendly food to your school? We love to see where you guys are all at right now. So yes, we have the Assembly Bill 479. We'll be sending that out after the webinar. Any support you can give, whether it's a phone call to your representative, that'll be great. We're going to share this toolkit with you as well and follow up on how we can best support you in your efforts. And yeah.
So as we're doing, yeah. So as we're doing this poll, also just think about your questions and please type them into the chat box so we can get started with your questions or comments, or we'd love to hear from you.
Yes, thank you. All right, so we'll now, if we could go to the next slide, Kari. So yeah, so we have some time for questions and answers. Want to hear anything that's come up for you during, we know there was a lot of information in that webinar. This is my contact email if you want to follow up sooner rather than later, but I'll definitely be sending some follow-up notes to all the attendees. Awesome, great. We got some people from that poll response. People want to support AB 479. We want people who want to take action at the district level. So this is all exciting. So we'll definitely be reaching out and seeing how we can best support each other as we advocate for these changes. All right, so yeah, do we have any questions in the chat box? Yes, we have a question here. What do you think of the Good Food Purchasing Agreement? Is it worthwhile to encourage school districts to get involved? Absolutely, yes. We love the Good Food Purchasing Program. It is a great way for schools to help bring more plant-based meals as well, because the climate change mitigation is part of the values and the goals of the Good Food Purchasing Agreement. Kari, I don't know if you want to share more on the Good Food Purchasing Program?
And the other reason we love the Good Food Purchasing Program is that it embodies all the values that Friends of the Earth really cares about, including labor, social justice, local farmers, organic farmers, animal welfare. It really pulls together and it pulls together all the issues. It's not just one or the other. It's really trying to reform the whole food system. So we're big supporters. We actually led a coalition in DC to get the Good Food Purchasing Program adopted there in December, and we strongly support them. And if you want to help get the Good Food Purchasing Program in your community, we would be more than happy to help support you in doing that.
Awesome, thank you. All right, and another good question for the 5 different federal components for the 5 different meal items that have to be taken. It seems quite easy to avoid dairy. So why was there a charter school in Florida that was denied funding for not serving it? That is a big question. Kari, do you know why maybe that school was possibly denied funding?
For dairy, yeah. So if I'm remembering, I actually don't completely know, but I think we were talking about that the other day. A school, there's a regulation on the books that schools have to offer dairy as part of the meal, the reimbursable meal. It's a requirement from Congress, and we would very much like to change that, because we know that 60 to 80 to 90% of the kids, many of the kids that get free and reduced lunch are actually lactose intolerant. Not only do we know that dairy, factory farm dairy, is really pretty harmful for animals and for the environment, but it also really is not healthy for a lot of kids, and so who are lactose intolerant. So anyway, I think this school did not serve the milk. And for that reason may have been denied funding, because that's a requirement in order to get the funding. Is that Elizabeth, does that sound right?
Yeah, and the questions that I would want to further explore with this question is that it's a charter school. So charter schools, that can be tied through the public school district that are applying, they apply usually separately to participate in the National School Lunch Program. So there's a few questions that I would want to know about the charter school first before figuring out if they didn't meet compliance on something, so they didn't get the reimbursed meals that they asked for. So there's a couple other questions to explore there, but I'm happy to work with you offline, Kathleen, to figure out the details behind why that happened exactly. But yeah, there's lots of school districts have a very hard time meeting compliance with all the different things they have to keep on top of. So it's not surprising to hear that these things unfortunately can happen to school districts. All right, so moving on to the next question. How much does the plant-based lunch bill, AB 479, reimburse for each meal? Great question. So right now we're advocating for 20 cents to be added for each additional plant-based meal served, and 10 cents for each additional plant-based beverage served. So that answers that one. Let's see what else we got. Oh, I just glanced at the recipes. Yes, we have those. I believe we have those recipes. So we'll have resources with lots of awesome recipes to share with you all as part of the toolkit and the school resources we have available. All right, I'm looking at this other one. Okay, do you find it more effective? Trying to think what that word. So a school district, do you find it more effective to make progress at a school district and encourage them to go forward, or to point out that there is not enough being done and effectively shame them into action? This is a complicated question. We definitely have, a whole village, and when we can collaborate and figure out what shared goals are and how we can effectively bring about that change, I think that's always a great way to make sure that we have everyone at on the team who's needed, especially as we go up the leadership chain with school board members, superintendents. Food service directors do come and go. So, it depends on who the challenging person is. Maybe, there's a job change at some point in the future, and that's a good opportunity to jump in and influence change. So yeah, I don't know, Kari, do you have anything to add to that, the one or the other, shaming versus directing?
I always think you can catch more flies with honey, right? So I think initially we really encourage people to reach out and stay positive to start, and really wait and see kind of what the response is, and how much openness there is to change. And I think you kind of go through the process. And so if there really isn't if there's a lot of resistance, at that point, then I think it's worth moving to a different strategy, which might include a little bit more pressure, and also engaging the school board, engaging principal, engaging, other folks who might have some power to make change in the system. So we like to start out really positive and collaborative, because we know that school food directors are really doing the best they can with really limited resources. They have a really tough job, if you think about it. They're working in this context of big food and lots of subsidies for the kinds of food that we know are not the most healthy for our kids and the planet. So they're working in a very difficult environment.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. All right, I'm not a parent, but want to be involved in food justice at this local school level. How can I plug in? Oh, that's just a great, wish. So thank you for your interest in that and seeing that important component to this effort. I would recommend, this is part of the toolkit. They want to figure out who our team members are, what available groups are in your region. So maybe there's a local Food Systems Alliance group that you can also check in with, see if they've talked about food justice, if they're working on any projects. There's a lot of slow food groups as well that I know are focusing on food justice. Kari, do you have other suggestions for her, how to plug in?
Yeah, well, we look forward to being in touch. I would definitely Elizabeth is going to be she has her information here. So please reach out to Elizabeth and let her know where you live. And we are very connected to different organizations around the state. And so, and we want to identify in different regions, pods of people that really care about these issues, and we want to bring them together. And so we know other kinds of grassroots efforts that are going on, so we can kind of connect you. So definitely be in touch with us. We're here to support you.
Yeah, thanks. All right, will the plant-based meals reimbursed be 100% vegan? So we're basically asking for all the meals to not include any animal products. That answers that. All right, can you share the money-saving examples to switch from scratch cooking like the muffins? Yes, schools are calculating all of this and sharing that they have to justify a lot of these costs, and schools do operate like a business within their school district. So they always have to be in the black. So many school districts capture these numbers and use it to support the work that they're doing. So if there's a particular argument that you're hoping to make with your school district on scratch cooking, we're happy to pull some data and see what kitchen facilities they're working with, what their staff looks like, what food they're currently purchasing, and we can go from there. That's a great question. Someone like to thank us for a great answer in approaching a school board. Thank you. All right, and I don't know, is there any other outlets for questions that we may be missing, Drew, or is the chat box capturing all these?
No, people have been typing them in chat, so that's what we've got so far. If folks have additional questions, you can type them into the chat window now.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, we have just a couple minutes left, so ask away.
I know, so I think some of you joined on late too. If you want to, for fun, describe school food in one word, you can go ahead and add that to the chat box too while we still have 2 minutes. I want to capture more of those responses, maybe make an infographic. like that one. So Valerie has the acronym Standard American Diet, SAD.
Yeah.
It is sad, but creative. So thank you for putting that out there. All right, we'll just maybe give it a little bit more time and then we'll wrap up. Yes, all right. Kari, we got the group San Diego 350 or SD 350 endorsed AB 479. Can that be useful to our efforts?
Yes, definitely, of course. Yeah. Actually, you know what? Are you on the line? If they're on the line, we actually really need your help with the San Diego Assembly member. She's the head of the Appropriations Committee, Lorena Gonzalez. And so if there's any folks in San Diego who can give Lorena Gonzalez a call and let her know that you really support this bill, it would be tremendously helpful. And if you need more information about how to do that, just contact Elizabeth Vaughn. She will give you all the information you need. It's really important. We need a Assembly member Lorena to be supporting this bill.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. That will be great. And again,
Lorena,
we have
Assembly member Gonzalez. Sorry, Lorena Gonzalez.
Yeah, and she's down in the southeast region of Chula Vista. So if anyone lives in that area too, please call her. And thank you. Yes, any endorsement and influence is huge. We have a limited time to do that. So thank you in advance for helping with that.
Yeah, I just want to say I'll say one quick thing. You know, talking about AB 479, one thing I was trying to get through this pretty quickly. So I forgot to add that we already have over 70 organizations supporting the bill from all kinds of places, the education community, the healthcare community. We have over 100 physicians that have written in support, plus many, many organizations. We have food and agriculture organizations, animal protection organizations, a whole range of groups, and environmental groups, of course. And it's just great to see a whole broad range of groups that are supporting. So it's been very exciting to see the groundswell.
Yeah, awesome. All right, and I'll take this one last question. We have a minute left. So this person's been trying to get different speakers into the school regarding climate change and farm animal sanctuaries, but their principal is very resistant. Is there a force or group that can assist in persuading a school why this is so important? And yeah, we're definitely happy to work with you. A lot of times the messaging is key, and maybe additional points of influence with this particular principal. So yeah, we're happy. The more we know about the person, the more, the more little points of influence we can pull out and see maybe going through the students would be a better approach, or maybe they have a close relationship with some of the teachers. So we'll definitely want to work with you and see if we can help with that. Because yeah, we would love to help support and provide those presentations or connect you with other support networks on the ground who can come and speak to your school about these important matters. So definitely happy to work with that. Kari, do you have anything to add on the principal? A very resistant principal?
Well, you know, they're not always the gatekeeper for everything that happens. So I think you can work around that through teachers and students, or student clubs, or garden clubs, or maybe change the topic a little bit, but, you know, present the same information. But yeah, we're happy to work with you on brainstorming that one. So I think we should, we got to wrap up then.
Yes, and thank you everyone for your interest in this important topic and attending this fully packed webinar. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to being in touch. So thank you for all your time, and yeah, look forward to seeing you out there in the field doing this work. Everyone have a good day. Bye.
Thanks everybody.
Great day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.